Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, the 2021 team webinar here from a professional. Thank you very much for joining us today. Before we get started, if I could just get a couple people to click the raise hand button to make sure that you can hear me clearly and that you can see the screen that says Future City on it, just to make sure that the audio visuals work. Oh, perfect. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Well, my name is Jake Williams. I'm the program coordinator for the Future City Competitions headquarters office. Also on the line is Maggie Dressel, Future City's program manager. She's keeping an eye on the questions in the chat box and in the Q&A. So as we go along, if you have any questions, feel free to just type them in as we go. A couple housekeeping items before we get into the program itself. Like I said, you can type in questions at any time and we'll address them at the end in the Q&A session. With so many attendees on the line, you might have noticed that all guests are currently muted, but you can ask any questions by just typing them in either the Q&A or the chat box. If you have any audio issues, you can always switch between using your computer audio or calling in by the phone. That's available in the option under the control panel for Zoom. And you'll also notice after the program is over that there's a short survey that will pop up. Please take a moment to fill out that survey. It's very short, it's just 2 questions, and your feedback really helps us as we develop future programs like this. Also, a recording of this webinar is going to be posted in the resources section of the Future City website. It's also going to be emailed to everybody who registered for the program. As a reminder, today's webinar is not about general Future City questions. If you have specific competition questions or comments or anything that you'd like clarification on as far as the rules or deliverables, there's materials about that on the resources page of the website. You can also email your regional coordinator for confirmation on those types of questions. The Future City competition and webinars like this wouldn't be possible without the help of our sponsors and our partners. So I want to give a big thanks to our final sponsors, Bechtel Corporation, Bentley Systems, NCEES, and Shell. And a big thank you as well to Future City's program sponsors, the Project Management Institute Educational Foundation and the United Engineering Foundation. So to kind of get things started, I've been working at Future City for the last 4 years. But a long time before that, back when I was in middle school, I was a participant of Future City, like a lot of you are now. I had a really great time working on my project with my team. And even though it wasn't always easy and oftentimes we didn't agree on things, it still was a really amazing experience to work through those challenges and come up with a project that by the end we were really proud of. Things like writing our essay, creating our model, rehearsing our presentation, all of that was a really fun part of the journey. But the other thing that was so memorable about the experience was getting to talk with the mentors and the judges. And I learned a lot about all different types of careers from just the 1 year that I did Future City in 8th grade. So as you work on your Future City, you may find that you really like doing specific things with your team or specific parts of the project. And if so, there's probably a field out there where adults are doing those kind of things in their everyday lives for their job. So today we get to hear from 2 awesome organizations and learn a bit about what they're all about. These organizations are sponsoring Future City Special Awards at the regional and finals competitions, so keep an eye out for them. And also remember that the point of the Special Awards is not just winning, but it's also to dive into a specific field, a technical field, and learn more about it. So that's why today we have folks from these groups to talk a little bit about what they do. And by the end, I think that you'll have some new ideas about things to explore for your Future City project, and you might develop some new interests beyond Future City as well. So let's get right into it. Our guests today are Scott Bishop and Brad Roberts from the National Council of Examiners for Engineering and Surveying, or NCEES, and Uma Hurumigular from Project Management Institute to discuss PMI and the Project Management Educational Foundation. So to start, Scott Bishop has more than 20 years of experience as a land surveyor in both public and private sectors. He has been involved with all types of surveys and surveying as an expert witness on multiple cases. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Geomatics and is a recipient of the Utah Council of Land Surveyors Land Surveyor of the Year. Brad Roberts is a professional land surveyor out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He has 13 years of surveying experience. Brad works in the private sector for Sigma Consulting Group, where he and his team conducts various types of surveys from everything from swamps in Louisiana to crop fields in Mississippi. He is a past recipient of LSPS Young Surveyors Excellence Award. Scott and Brad, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us on, Jake. It's always a pleasure.
So as Jake mentioned, we're here representing NCEES. NCEES's role is that of they produce exams and they promote licensure for engineers and surveyors across the country. Brad and I have been involved with Future Cities for the last couple of years and have had the opportunity to judge some of the finals competitions. And it's definitely one of the highlights of the role and the job we get to do with NCEES.
Yeah, I completely agree. We award the special award that we judge for is Best Land Surveying Practice. And if any of you are repeat competitors, perhaps we've seen you guys in past competitions, and we look forward to judging this year.
So what we thought we'd do is we talk a little bit about surveying. So Jake, if you want to jump into that first slide, we thought we'd talk a little bit about what surveyors do from a day-to-day standpoint, and then also share with you some of our thoughts on how a surveyor or what a surveyor's role may be with this Future Cities theme. So surveyors are, I always joke and say, we're master measurers. We can measure and mark all sorts of different things, from people's property boundaries to construction for building roads and infrastructure, water, and those type of things. We prepare topographic maps or maps that show the terrain. And again, working with those from contractors and people that actually build infrastructure, and then all sorts of legal aspects, from witness in court, preparing legal documents and deeds to transfer property. One of the interesting things about this year's topic is being up on the moon. Surveyors have been very involved with the prior moon landings that took place in the late 60s. They actually took some survey equipment up to the moon. And for all you crazy technical buffs out there, the moon during the cycle, about once a month, it changes by about 13,000 miles. And based on the surveying equipment they have on the moon, I can tell you that it's changing at a rate about 3.8 centimeters per year. It's just spiraling farther and farther away from us. So about 1.5 inches a year, the moon's getting farther away from us. I don't know what that's going to mean in a million years, but I'll be able to tell you how far away it is at that point.
Yeah, I mean, that's super interesting, Scott. I actually did not know that. I'm here learning as well. People always ask me what do you do as a land surveyor, and I think that answer is consistently evolving. In regards to surveying on the moon, it's kind of uncharted territory, right? Kind of like Christopher Columbus in the United States and North America. It was all uncharted territory, and in regards to inhabiting the moon, it's something that we're going to have to play a large role in. Jake, you want to skip over to that next slide? We'll kind of discuss a little bit about the different areas of land surveying. We'll touch on a couple of these, and surveying is dynamic. There's almost an area of surveying for everyone, really. It's like a buffet, right? We've got forensic surveying, and that's kind of paying more attention to the minutia, the details of a particular site or project. I know in the past we've done some surveys for car accidents, and that locating that very detailed information, in regards to whether or not a roadway was scoured that may have caused a car to leave the roadway or something like that. Just very, very detailed information. Construction surveying, that we kind of touched on that. Layout is really that construction surveying. We always get these designs from architects or engineers, and these designs have to be put on the ground. They have to go from paper to actuality. And we go out and we place these items, whether it be a building or a road or subsurface drainage or sewage, storm drain, that kind of thing. Photogrammetry is really an area that I'm unfamiliar with. Know a little bit about it, but this kind of your drone stuff. Overlapping ortho images create digital terrain models, and that could be very useful in a moon-based application, right? I don't know if hydrographic surveying is overly applicable. We're still trying to find that water source on the moon, right? Whether or not we create it ourselves or we come across some water on the moon, that kind of thing. So surveying, hydrographic surveying is essentially topographic surveying, but under the water, which kind of touches on that topographic. We're essentially just mapping the terrain, and hydrographic just being in bodies of water, subwater surface. Boundary surveying is probably something that I do most. This is going to deal with property rights, and in regards to being on the moon, it's new territory. So there's going to be that free for all. Who's gonna claim what's your parcel of property look like versus what's your neighbor's parcel of property? What's it going to look like, and where's that property line? Because as much as we love our neighbors, sometimes we don't want them encroaching into our personal space. GIS is more of a database type of surveying, where we go through. We see this here in Louisiana specifically with the local water company, where their service lines are, where their meters are, where their water valves are. We'll go out and we'll locate these specific features, and we'll put them into this big database, and it helps with planning realistically. Geodesy is something that I think we're working on in regards to the moon right now. We're taking a curved surface or an ellipse surface such as the Earth, and we're flattening that thing out. We're making these coordinate systems that are relative, taking that kind of circular, that spherical surface and making it a map projection, just flattening that thing out, and based on the type of projection that we're looking into, it has to do with the protraction of errors in that projection. I'm almost certain that we're using geodesy right now with the moon. So I think surveying is definitely something that is very relevant to this year's theme for Future Cities, and I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with.
It's amazing as BJ was going through some of that stuff. Obviously there's some very technical aspects, but there's also just some everyday things of, water needs to get to our house. When we take a shower, all the water, and we flush the toilet, that needs to go away from our houses. And those things we take for granted really can help with the surveying. If you could jump that next slide, it's interesting as Brad mentioned. The layout, if you look at Washington, D.C., it's kind of laid out in a spoke or a wheel with the center, and the lines come out, the roads, like on spokes on a wheel. A lot of the Western states out here in the Western part of the country, things are laid out in a grid. And so that's something that I think as you guys are developing your city, what type of layout to help in transportation, to define different zoning areas are applicable on the moon. So that's something you'll be able to use a surveyor for. We're kind of the first on the scene. We've got that bullet on there. Before you can determine where things are, you've got to know the topography, what's high, what's low, the distance between those types of, where you want the industrial and the commercial and the residential areas. So surveyors would gather that data. You develop your city, you can lay that out and kind of break that up. The surveyor would then take that on the ground through that geodesy, or take that map you've got on the computer and put it out on the ground. So that's kind of day of life in the surveyor. No day is the same. I kind of tell people all the time, whatever you do, the next day you could be doing something completely different.
Scott, something I was thinking about recently when the topic came up of life on the moon is gravity. Less gravity on the moon, right? We're consistently measuring, very specific points of gravity on the Earth's surface, and we develop these models. They're called geoid models, based on the information that we receive from these things called gravity meters. And we model this thing to be somewhat like sea level. We and honestly, they change year to year. The equipment becomes more accurate. We're able to measure more data more accurately in a more time efficient manner. And we update this geoid model every couple of years, and it does cause a vertical shift, and sometimes that can be a little frustrating. But with regards to gravity on the moon and there being less gravity, we're going to have to establish these points of on the moon's surface of measuring gravity, and then develop a model of elevation off of that gravity.
So this has been, like I say, Brad and I are very passionate about this. Our last little slide just shows, right now, I mentioned things we're using surveying every day in your life, from getting directions on your phone or a computer to measuring something. Obviously, GPS, it's still going to work up on the moon. It might work a little bit better because there's less atmosphere, less air, less gravity, and things to deal with. And then certainly as you plan your city out. So we're looking forward to seeing the models you come up with. This year is certainly different. And we're really going to miss being there to judge and visit with you and learn and share some of our knowledge about surveying. But we really appreciate this opportunity we've had to spend just a few minutes with you and talk about what surveying is and how it relates to Future Cities competition.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks again, guys. It's always a pleasure to be able to be a part of Future Cities and be able to interact with you guys. I can tell you guys are the future. Infinitely smarter than I was at that age. I can tell you. You guys always impress us, and we look forward to catching up with you guys soon.
Great. Thank you, Brad and Scott. Next, we'll hear from Uma Hire Magulor, who's a senior manager at Deloitte Consulting in cloud engineering. Uma has a master's in business administration and a master's in computer information systems, and bachelor's in finance and commerce. She's an alumni of the Leadership Institute management class and is passionate about volunteering and giving back to various community organizations. Uma, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. So that's a tough act to follow, listening about all this surveying happening around. Thank you all for this time. So as Jake, in his kind introduction, thank you for that, Jake. I'm a volunteer with both PMI, Project Management Institute, and the Project Management Education Foundation. So the Project Management Education Foundation is the one that sponsors the special award for project management for Future City. So next slide, please. And we can skip to the next one. I kind of talked to that. So the Project Management Education Foundation, it really partners with several organizations worldwide, various different nonprofits like the Discovery E, to help young people and to apply and learn project management skills, and especially the skills that you can use in your everyday life. Next slide, please. So the whole mission of PMIEF is to be able to help with the social good activities around the world. So educators, nonprofit professionals, various different practitioners and individuals around the world have used their project management knowledge and skills to help various social good projects. So we've been doing this from PMIEF for almost the past 30 years. And we have touched various different global communities with this type of project planning knowledge that we have shared. Next slide, please. So what is it? What does it really mean about when I say project planning, right? So it could be anything from planning how to distribute COVID-19 vaccines. It could be about how we plan sending the first man to moon. And when you hear NASA say, the Apollo program, they talk about program versus project. So it's using these various terminologies and understanding this framework of project management to help and prepare the youth, not only just in your future city projects, but also to explore careers as you begin to find, what is it that captures your interest, like the previous speaker was saying, and using those knowledge and skills to further develop and integrate it into various programs that you will either work with in your school life and college life as you go forward. Next slide, please. So what are some of these critical life skills that we talk about that you will learn as part of this? PMIF partners with a lot of different nonprofit organizations to serve youth. Some of the life skills that we have heard folks talk about learning is collaboration, coming together as a community, improving and honing those creativity skills, thinking about how to solve problems and tweaking and expanding those critical thinking, learning how to communicate and listen and do so with confidence. So these are the type of skills that you can use not just in your project today, but even as you progress into almost any profession that you can think of tomorrow. Next slide, please. So if you have looked at your building the lunar city of tomorrow and the future city handbook, the left side is probably what you are all starting to think about, and thinking about it in that cyclical way of plan, do, review, and define, right? So it's a cyclical as you learn to do it. But when you think about it in terms of how do we apply this in the real world? So stepping a little back about what I have done in my life, I have worked with various companies, State Farm Insurance, American Red Cross, the Life Sciences Organization, IBM, Hewlett Packard, and Deloitte. So you're thinking, what is the similarity between insurance, healthcare, technology company, right, and cloud today? The only thing that really makes all our projects run is being able to visualize it from beginning to end, or at least starting to understand what is it that we're trying to do today. That's your define. And that is what we call as planning in the real world. We try to plan and define a scope of what is it that we're trying to achieve. And then if you look at it to the end, what is the outcome we want to derive? What is the impact we want to make with this project? And then we work backwards and say, okay, so how do we break this up into viable chunks that we can actually work on, that we can delegate, that we can each take responsibility for? And then also, how do we communicate with each other as we work on our little pieces? And how do we bring all those different jigsaw puzzle pieces together to finally say our project is done? Or we finally get the project to a state that says, okay, now we can actually test it. So that is the Agile methodology, where we make them into little chunks where we can go and show it and say, is this really what we wanted to build? Is this what is the final outcome? So being able to visualize and re-engineer it from what we want to have as the end product or service, and then thinking back into what do we have to do today? What do we have to do tomorrow? What do we have to do to work as an effective group? Life happens. Nobody in the world had ever planned or thought that we would be hit with a pandemic like COVID last year. Our whole way of operating, all our offices and schools and our entire universe has jumped into this world of Zoom and virtual community. So we have to look at the risks, so managing for risk, thinking about what if something happens, what am I going to do? Being able to do that risk planning ahead of time helps us to think about and take action in the eventuality that some risk does come to fruition. So taking all these different components together and being able to work with it in a cyclical process. So I touched on two things. I talked about project and I talked about program. So when you think about NASA, they always talk about the Apollo program, right? So project is something where it has a beginning and an end. It's a lot like your future city project, right? You know when it starts, you know by when you have to finish. You have certain deliverables that are due at certain milestone checkpoints. There's certain check-ins you have to do with either your instructor or your tutor. And all of that has a beginning and an end. You will be done with submission and review. But a program is something that is ongoing. So if you were to build your future city, let's say your virtual model today, and Jake, I'm not putting ideas into your head, but if you were to take this and then build upon it, say in the next year when we all come into the real world and we can all be face to each other, and then now you're building that model. So it's an ongoing program. So it's an ongoing where you build it in 1 year, and then you build a simulation in your SimCity software, and then the next year you actually build a real model. And then perhaps one day when you all become these wonderful engineers and scientists, you may actually build one of these wonderful cities in the real world. So it's an ongoing program of creating and building, and that's what makes it a program. So coming back to PMIEF, and if you have any questions of what I'm talking about, feel free to put it in the Q&A. I believe someone is monitoring it for the questions. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So PMIEF, they've started since almost 2012, and they have given away about 60 grants for people that are looking to hone their project management skills to do good with various different nonprofits. So like myself, there are volunteers all across the globe who work every day to go and talk to nonprofits and help them understand this whole cycle of how the project management framework works, and then how we can share our knowledge to help them achieve their missions. So some of the ones, the next few slides, Jake, if you want to just run them through, I'll kind of quickly give an overview. So you'll see as the next few slides, as Jake runs through it, there's the Children's International, there's the F1 in schools, the JA Africa, the JA Europe, and then even the Special Olympics, and then of course the Discovery E nonprofits. So these are some of the nonprofits that PMIEF has worked closely with in the past, and we really enjoy working with you, all of the students who are, pursuing careers hopefully someday in STEM. And the last slide, please. So what is it? What are we doing as far as giving you this award? What are we giving you this award for? So what we really want to look at is, here's some questions that I have on the screen. I won't read out the questions, but we're really looking to see, do you understand how to look at your project end to end? Can you really understand and ask those questions about what is it that you have to do? How did you think about your project? How did you visualize the entire goals? How did you break your goals into objectives? How did you recruit your team? How did you form your team? Was there a project leader? Were you all project leaders? And how did you decide when you were going to finish which task and who was going to take responsibility for which task? And then also when you face challenges, which you probably will, how did you go about resolving it? What was your thought process with it? What tools did you use? So here's some of the things that we are looking for as we try to understand how you came about creating your city and your project. So thank you very much. Hopefully that was a little helpful to understand what is it that project managers do in the real world. Back to you, Jake.
Thank you very much, Uma. That was great.
Thank you.
So now we have time for questions. So if you have any questions that you haven't already typed in, feel free to type them in now. You can use the question and answer box, or you can put them in the chat box. Either is fine. If you have general questions or specific ones for either Brad and Scott or for Uma. We have a couple questions so far, but if anyone else has more, feel free to type them in now. One student asked, when you all were students, did you do any projects like Future City?
So that seems pretty aimed at all of us. Unfortunately, I did not have the opportunity to do anything like Future Cities. I grew up in a very, very small rural town in South Louisiana. Town consists of about 2,000. My graduating class was less than 100 people. So something to the scale of Future Cities and doing that competition, we didn't have the opportunity. Kind of grew up with those standard 3 sports: basketball, football, and baseball. And if you didn't play those 3, you were kind of out of luck. I would have loved to have been involved in something like this. I think it's absolutely wonderful, and honestly, feel very lucky to be a part of it even now later in my career.
Yeah, this is Emma. I have not done anything like a Future City project, and I would have absolutely been all over it if I had the opportunity when I was in school. Though for one of my classes, for my economics class, we had to conduct a field trip and submit a report, kind of do it like a study project. So I chose a industrial parts company and went and looked at how do they start with their design to manufacturing, distribution, and then finally getting it into the retail market. So the entire end-to-end of how that company functions. And then also kind of learning a snapshot of their financials on how they're able to run the company. So it was very interesting from that perspective to have had that opportunity to do the end-to-end. But this is so cool that you all get to use the software, you get to do the SimCity modeling. So this is truly a great opportunity.
Great. We have a couple other questions coming in. I think this one is for Uma. This person asks, if everyone on the team has different ideas, how do you get to one idea? Is there a kind of strategy that project managers use that folks who are doing Future City might kind of incorporate when they have differing ideas about what the best way to complete a project is?
That is an excellent question. And this is something that I have to deal with every time on every single project. So what I do is I schedule a brainstorming session when we are kicking off a project. So you have a project kickoff, you identify who is all part of your team. And then you have a brainstorming session. You assign somebody to be able to take all the notes of all the ideas. No idea is a wrong idea. No idea is a bad idea. You just basically record all the ideas. So that is a brainstorming. You put everything, you just throw everything at the board, if you will. And then once you have all the ideas, that way everybody feels open and now you're all part and involved into it. The biggest part of a project is not just the idea generation and the finalization, it's being able to give everybody on your team a voice and making everybody feel heard. If everybody on your team feels heard, however small a team is, if you're a team of 3, if you're a team of 10, or if you're a team of 50, every time I've come around, I've heard all kinds of numbers. Whatever the size of your team is, it's important to get everybody involved and everybody actively involved. So once you've got that brainstorming list, then you start using any number of ways to prioritize it and rank it. And you set up the norm that nobody walks away feeling bad if your idea is not taken, or if your idea gets a score of 1 versus 5. So use a scoring rubric, and that way it's not personal. And then when you come out of it, look at your top 3, and then look at your top 3, and again look at your top 3, and then say, okay, if we pick one of these of the top 3, will it meet the outcome or the end deliverable we need? And then finally, do your last 3 and you pick out of that, do your scoring prioritization again, and then you'll have your final idea. Hopefully that helps. I know it's not as easy as I said. It will probably take you an entire day to do this, but do it and keep doing those repetitions until you get to the right idea.
Good question and a good answer. Next question is for Brad and or Scott. When did you decide you wanted to work with surveying?
You know, I didn't know about surveying until I showed up on my first day on the job. I had somebody that lived in the community that was a surveyor. He was actually the retired surveyor general in the United States that came to Linden, Utah to start golfing, and I started surveying a little bit. But my first day, that first week on the job, I knew this is what I wanted to do with my life and my career. So I was 21 years old and started surveying and haven't looked back since. I've talked to a lot of people. You know, there's a lot of individuals that become surveyors. They start out in the engineering field. You hear a lot about, you know, as young kids, I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. No one ever talks, I want to be a surveyor when I grow up. And so a lot of people with engineering, they'll take a surveying class and they'll realize, man, I just love it. And so I've joked with people and said, it's kind of just in your DNA. If you like solving problems and being outdoors, figuring out things, we have the coolest tools in the office. I work at a big engineering firm and they're always amazed that, you know, we have boats and drones and airplanes and LiDAR units and all sorts of cool stuff that it's kind of the best of all the worlds. So that's how I got there, Brad.
Yeah, Scott, I was, you've probably heard me mention countless times, I was kind of the opposite. You know, my dad's a surveyor. I grew up surveying kind of in the summer times, helping him out. And honestly, I left high school saying, I will not be a surveyor. I don't want to survey. It's hot outside and there's mosquitoes down here in South Louisiana, and it's just not something I'm interested in. And as I got to college and enrolled in a civil engineering program, sitting in some of those courses, just realizing that this was not for me. I wanted that kind of quasi office field mix of you know, employment, and I wanted to bounce around a little bit, and I wanted to manage my projects in the field. And you know, taking those civil engineering courses, I really kind of look back on surveying and kind of always felt that draw back to the profession, and thought that, you know, I could serve it as well as it could serve me. And you know, I made the shift back, and I've been into it now for quite quite a few years. I guess about 13 now, and I can tell you, I don't regret my decision in the slightest.
Not necessarily what you planned right away, but turned out to be a good decision, seems like. Related to that, we have a question. Where did everyone go to college and what did you study there? Brad, you mentioned this a little bit, but Uma, do you want to start, and then you can do Scott and then Brad? Where did you go to college, and what did you study to get to where you are now?
That's a long question, Butler. So I went to Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois, and I studied master's in computer science. So I do have a computer science background. As you can tell from the last few companies, I've worked in technology a lot. I use project management and my PMP, which is a project management professional certification through PMI. That has been my guiding light. It didn't matter which organization I worked with, my PMP always opened new doors and new opportunities for me.
This is Scott. I went to school at Idaho State University. At that time, there was not a program in the state of Utah that offered a bachelor's degree in surveying. So I got married and moved with my wife up to Idaho State in Pocatello, Idaho. And I got a degree in geomatic engineering. And now there's actually a 4-year degree in Utah, and there's several more around and throughout the country.
Yeah. So kind of the you know, to expound a little bit on what I mentioned earlier, you know, I left high school, went to college, enrolled in a civil engineering program. I like to tell everybody that I wanted to go to all of the colleges here in Louisiana. So I started at Louisiana Tech in civil, left there, still with the mindset of I'm not gonna go into land surveying, and I ended up at Southeastern, and I was studying biology. Left there, back to civil at LSU. Go Tigers! Kind of felt that calling back to surveying. So the only university here in Louisiana for surveying or geomatics is Nichols State down in Thibodaux. So I lived in Baton Rouge, and I made that 1.5-hour commute 3 days a week to Thibodaux, and ended up finishing at Nichols State.
Great, thank you. Next question is for Uma. Is it easier if every person on a team or in a workplace is in charge of one thing, typically, or is it better to spread out the specific kind of work and assignments, do you think?
It depends. So it depends on how much work you have there. So you have to identify what is the scope of work, and then also look at who you have on the team. What is the skill set of everyone on the team? Is there a person who can do surveying? Is there a person who can be a project manager? Do you have enough number of people who can be in charge of one thing and have the special skills and knowledge that is needed for that one thing? Typically, what you'll find is some of the specialized work, probably like surveying, some of the engineering, you will see that there'll be a group of people working very closely together on the same pieces of the same particular part of a project. And you'll usually have a team lead, which helps to be the coordinator, to be that facilitator who's able to bring all these pieces together and drive the team towards progressing from day to day or week to week. So you'll have to take a deep look at what is it, A, that you have to do and accomplish, and then B, who do you have on the team? And then based on the answer for those two, then you'll be able to say, can we have different people do different things? Hope that is helpful.
Excellent, great. Linda asks, what advice would you give students that are interested in studying engineering or science?
My advice would be to go for it. Find a program or a specific area that interests you. Those are pretty broad. Engineering and science are pretty broad topics. So find somewhere that works for you to go to school, and an area of topic and interest that you like, and go for it.
Yeah, I agree, Scott. I'm actually going to get on that NCEES pedestal and promote professional licensure. So if you're looking at engineering, all engineering professions don't necessarily require professional licensure. However, I am a big supporter of professional licensure. Take those national exams and set yourself apart from the engineer versus the professional engineer.
Yeah, I would say the same. I'd echo both of them. I'd say go for it. We have fewer and fewer people in STEM, and it's very important at a very early age, if you're able to get the knowledge and the experience as you move forward, to be in the STEM careers. And later on, you can still study other non-STEM subjects and explore other hobbies or careers, but it's very important to have that baseline degree or knowledge in STEM.
Excellent. This is a question that I believe is for Brad or Scott, but Uma, if you have an answer, feel free to hop in. Can you explain what an industrial zone is? Is that something you work with? And this person would like to know what is it?
Scott, I'll leave this question to you. I don't work in the industrial market in the slightest.
So yeah, that probably came from the topic that I said. When you're laying out your community on the moon, you'd have your residential zone, your commercial zone, and industrial zones. And Brad doesn't live in this, but I think he can relate to it. I've been to Baton Rouge and seen the refineries along the river. And so to me, an industrial zone is where your commerce is happening. Your manufacturing, your building, your warehouse type stuff. Typically not the most ideal place to have a nice little neighborhood in the middle of all the big manufacturing with truck traffic and loud noises. So they typically spread those out a little bit. They'll put the homes in one area. You'll have your community, your commerce zone in another area where you go shopping centers, and then your industrial zone, the manufacturing. And so that's what I referred to there. Again, something helpful as you develop your communities and you lay things out, just keep in mind of quality of living, the best way to deliver goods from a trail or train transportation or space shuttle, whatever you're going to use up there.
Great, excellent. Next question is for Uma. How do you get someone who is not interested or motivated to work on a project when they've been assigned?
Yeah, again, I say this happens to me every day too. I think a lot of reasons are there behind this. And in the short term of your project as applicable to your future study project, one thing you can do when you're starting to, when I say look at your team members and their skills, also look at what are the folks interested in. Is somebody interested in doing the research side of it? Is somebody interested in looking and doing the data collection? Is somebody interested in working on the SimCity software? So try and gauge and talk to everybody on the team, or each of you create some kind of a spreadsheet and say, these are the things we enjoy doing. This is the things we have fun doing. Because at the end of the day, this is supposed to be a fun and learning project. If you're not having fun, you're all going to get very tired of it. So look at that and see what are the interests of people. And then they could also look at what are folks good at. Sometimes those two things don't match. I could be interested in something and I could have fun doing something, but I may be really good at something else. Like I'm very good with finance and numbers, but I will not become a CPA. So there's two things that you can start looking at and probably find ways to assign those pieces of work to people that are interested and probably can pair up with somebody who's good at, and that way one can be the primary and the other one can be a shadowing to learn more about it and improve their skill too.
Great, excellent. We have a question that is for Brad or Scott. Is there certain colleges you have to go to be a survey person? Scott, you had mentioned that you had to move out of state to study surveying, but is that something that's available at a lot of colleges typically, or is it a pretty specialized area of study?
I think it used to be. Now, especially the last year, there are so many surveying programs online before the pandemic and the current situation we have. So I would not, today, if I was doing this, I would not leave. I would have been able to stay right here and done school remote and got that degree. Most schools, actually, you'd be surprised, offer an associate's. You can take some surveying classes and get enough to get you to meet your requirements to get licensed in each specific state. Each surveyor is licensed in a state. You can be licensed. I know Brad's licensed in several states, as am I out here in the West. Yeah, I don't think you have to go to a specific school. Some, just like anything else, some schools are better at some topics than others. And so, but yeah, I hope that answers your question.
And it's kind of a very specific requirement. I would steer you towards looking into what your state board's requirements are for surveying licensure. I know here in Louisiana, we require a 4-year degree, either in geomatics or in a 4-year degree in general, plus an additional year of surveying specific courses. And then, you have to sit for the national exams, the fundamentals of land surveying, and then the principles and practice of land surveying, as well as here in Louisiana, you have to take a Louisiana state-specific laws exam that coincides with the principles and practice national exam. NCEES is a wealth of knowledge in regards to each state's requirements. So if you're interested and kind of want to know what that path to licensure is, reach out to me, reach out to Scott, reach out to NCEES. we can help you if that's something that you're interested in.
Great. We have time for 2 more questions. When did you each realize you wanted to work with Future City, or how did you get involved with the Future City program as judges, as volunteers? Uma, do you want to start for that one?
Sure. I have been volunteering with my local chapter, the Project Management Institute, Washington, D.C. chapter for many years. And just being in the vicinity in D.C., our chapter was called upon for volunteers to come in as judges for the national levels competition in D.C. And then also to give away the special award for project management. So that's kind of was my first foray into it. But after participating and being a part of that the first year, I was just blown away with the level of knowledge and skills of all the middle school students, and I knew I wanted to be a part of this. So I've been doing this for the last 6 years, I think. So good luck to everybody for this year. I'm super excited.
I'll jump in. This is Scott. I was asked by NCEES if I'd be willing to judge the national competitions 4, 5, 6 years ago, and had that same experience as Uma. We didn't have Future Cities, and still technically don't here in Utah. I didn't know anything about it until I was invited to go and judge, and I started doing my research and was floored, absolutely blown away by what I saw there, and how dedicated and how interesting it was. And so I have been back every year since and have really enjoyed it. And Ava, to answer your question, I think that one day there will definitely be a city on the moon. It may not be the next couple of years, but there will be at one point a city on the moon.
Yeah, my experience with Future Cities, I was actually working with a different group through NCEES called the Emerging Engineers and Surveyors Group, and that group was just all about getting a younger voice into NCEES and getting some of those opinions of young professionals. And Scott was actually kind of the liaison between that group and NCEES, the organization itself. Got close with Scott, and he and I were asked to come in and do the special awards judging for Future Cities, and both got up there, and as Scott said, just absolutely blown away by the creative vision that you guys have, and the absolute talent that goes into the not only the model but the essay and the presentation. And it's just been a wonderful experience for me, and honestly hope that NCEES will have me come back in future years to be a judge.
Excellent, great. Well, just as a final kind of last words, last question, is there any kind of final advice or comments or anything each of you would give to our middle school students who are working hard away on their Future City projects now, either about what you've described with your own work, or for themselves, just in general, any last words of advice?
Yeah, guys, coming from Brad, just you're already doing amazing things. Just keep it up. If you're in this process already, honestly, I'm already impressed. As I said, I didn't really have the opportunity to be a part of anything like this. Kudos to you guys for being involved in Future Cities and having that kind of forward vision. In STEM. Keep it up, guys. I'm proud of y'all.
Yeah, my thoughts were just make sure and have fun. It can probably get deadlines and tense and sometimes intimidating when you're presenting or doing those things. Remember, this is a great learning experience. Just make the most of it and enjoy it.
Yeah, Steve, you stole my words there, Brad. Yeah, have fun is always my motto. So I will say, stay curious, be kind to each other. This may be just a school project, but this is a slice of the real world. How you work today really is how, we all work in the real world too. So be kind, be curious.
Excellent advice. Well, a big thank you to our three guests. Thank you so much for your time and for your excellent answers. For anybody on the call, if you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to your regional coordinator or to the general email inbox, which is info@futurecity.org. Like I mentioned, please take a moment to complete the very brief survey. It'll pop up on your screen as soon as the program is done. And thank you all very much. Have a great day and good luck with your Future City projects. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.